This is my first time using this microphone, and I don't know what to do because it's really ugly. It really bothers me when people hold it and do this thing. Please look at my smile or into my eyes and not at this microphone. I'm gonna be vulnerable for a second and share with you. I have 43,000 photos in my camera roll. I also have the widget on my phone where it will flip through your photos. You know, the one that targets you based upon how you're feeling that day. Nostalgia used to be something that really affected me. Being 24 and leaving college recently, this is something that really triggers a lot of people. If you're not able to cultivate the correct mindset about it, then it can really impact you. The important lesson is not to get stuck in the past. In the past couple of years, anxiety has taken on a new meaning. I don't know about you guys, but throughout my childhood and the beginning of my teenage years, people used to use the word anxious in a much different way. You would say, I'm anxious, I'm just really anxious, but it never had such a negative pull. If you had something exciting coming up, but it was kind of like nerve-wracking, that's what you would be anxious about. I'm just really anxious for later tonight. And so I was kind of confused like the past couple of years when anxiety took a whole different meaning. But with the current definition of anxiety, I kind of wanted to look at nostalgia as a little bit of an inverse of that feeling of anxiety, since they are equally as counterproductive and they kind of stem from the same place. Let's start by differentiating the two. I want to ask you, how can a painful feeling about the past be anxiety, and a comforting feeling about the past be nostalgia? This dynamic of the labeling of the past is not something that we have to do. I think it can be counterproductive, as I mentioned earlier, and really harmful to always label a situation leading with emotion. How can memory have so much control over our day-to-day? Memory without that feeling of regret or longing is just memory. Memory without the emotional charge is wisdom. We can just let it be that. Memory without the emotional charge of nostalgia is wisdom. Memory without the emotional charge of anxiety is wisdom. Now, to take it a step further, I want you to consider nostalgia is actually anxiety disguised. For example, how I kind of introduced this video, a lot of people can relate to the experience of leaving college. It can even be applied to leaving high school. It can be applied to leaving any kind of state of your life. There's a lot to be said about people who peak in high school and college, and I have a lot of thoughts about that, but that's kind of a different conversation. Here's the lesson though. If you went back there, nobody would be there. If you went back there, you are the only one who would be there. Like a desert, you would be standing in the middle of your own island that you have continued to live on, that you have allowed to continue to live on in your mind. You may have experienced this if you have gone back, if you try to go back, or if you keep trying to go back, nothing is the same. And no matter what you do, you cannot make it the same. That world does not exist anymore. So what happens, let's say, if you were to force yourself to go back? If you were to force yourself back into that environment, you are going to very quickly realize that the environment is gone, and what happens then, you are overcome with this pang of nostalgia, that very unique feeling of pain that nostalgia brings. Of course, we're kind of like taking a different route than the very simplistic lesson of nostalgia, which is just be grateful for the present moment. Okay, how many times can we hear that, and who does that help? Something I'd like to acknowledge that a lot of people don't is the fact that gratitude, and gratitude for the present moment specifically, is a skill and a muscle that somebody has to build. It sounds weird even saying this, but I'm going to be the one to say it. It is hard to be grateful. That's coming from someone who has everything. And I'm sure a lot of you have everything and still find it hard to be grateful, because sometimes it just is, because that is human nature. I want to explain why I believe it is a challenge. Since it can be hard to live in the present moment, it's not because we are bad people. There has to be something else happening, right? Something to explain. Let me give an example. Sometimes I am in my camera roll, or I go on my Instagram, whatever. I look through my own Instagram a lot. And I will see photos of myself pop up from very crazy, not good times in my life. Times that were either like fueled by self-sabotage, or I was just very, very lonely. The low points of my life. I will see photos or videos from that time, and I, in a very odd, selfish way, wish I was still there. It's a very fleeting thought, but it is kind of my way of romanticizing that period of my life. But it's very odd, right? And maybe you can relate to that. I started to ask myself why, and what is in my mind that is trying to deceive me into this lower version of myself. When I started to pick up on it, it started setting off alarms in my mind. What I have built them now as are ego alarms. There is a version of you that lives in your mind that is built, that is set out to trick you. Any sort of tone of this matter should set off an alarm in your mind. It's your ego. When you can actually begin to identify your ego on the spot, in the split second, in the second the tone of your thought pattern changes, that is when you can begin to disarm it. Step 1 is recognizing. Step 2 is disarming. It is not until you disarm your ego that you actually can even step into the gratitude of the present moment. We right now are being held back by this thing that nobody else can understand besides us. There's a reason why everybody on the outside is saying, be grateful, make a gratitude list. And for some reason for you, it's not working. One thing I have learned is that there are 0 shortcuts, especially when it comes to this mental wellness shit. There are no shortcuts. And so, as cute and as great intentioned as it is, making a list of things that you're grateful for in the morning is not going to have any real drastic effect on your life. What will is understanding and unlearning to reteach yourself how you want to live your day-to-day life. There's no way to delude yourself into making some sort of change. How could that be possible? How can you, living in your mind, trick your mind? It doesn't make sense. The important distinction here is delusion versus intention. Okay, just wait. How do we make that change? Let's talk about the ego and how to disarm it. In this case, we're using the lens of nostalgia to understand the ego. Ego, very simply, as I have learned to understand it, is anything that fuels your own doubts. And it is present through so much of our lives. When you learn to see it and separate yourself from it is when you really, really will have a breakthrough. I heard this for the first time in a Lana Del Rey song, but I'm sure it's been said forever and whatever. Don't come at me for that. But wherever you go, you take yourself. You can't run from yourself. You can run from your ego. There is a way to reclaim power in this. Without giving it much depth, the ego is, you can understand the ego as anything that is against you. Probably not like a person or things that are visible in front of you, but anything internally that is against you is ego acting. For religious or more spiritual interpretations, we can say that the devil is ego personified. I kept asking myself every single day, why do I feel like I am at war with myself? Why does it feel like a battlefield in my mind and my number one enemy is me? Until I was able to categorize what was happening in my mind. Spending enough time observing and analyzing your own thoughts is what will allow you in the first place to be able to see something like this. So what is ego doing when it shows us nostalgia? Basically, it is the ego's job to convince us that we should be or should want to be anywhere else than we actually are right now. So this is done in a number of ways with your past experiences. You can feel a couple ways about your past. You can feel indifferent, which we rarely are. You can feel nostalgic, or you can feel anxious. It is trying to show you again and again a place that you might want to live in or a place that you do not want to live in. Something that really, really changed my day-to-day life, that's so simple but really opened my eyes, is when I learned people are not thinking about you. 99% of the time, that situation that you're anxious over, that person that you can't stop thinking about, that interaction you can't stop thinking about, that person let it go within the same day and never thought about it again. The reason why it's so massive to you is because you are the center of your universe, obviously. But how selfish and how ignorant are we to believe that we act as the center of somebody else's universe ever? Maybe your closest family and friends, you are a side character in their lives, in their day-to-day thoughts, but that guy from the bar or the grocery store that you messed up in front of literally did not think twice and rolled their eyes and continued to think about themselves. Especially if it was a man. Come on. Just remember that they are not thinking about you. Do not hold yourself hostage to the past. What's very interesting, being a young person now, with social media, not only do other people and strangers have all of this unparalleled access to us, to our experiences, but we ourselves have all of this shit documented. Footage of ourselves growing up and messing up and being cringy. It is all there at our fingertips. I am not a boomer and I love taking photos of myself every day. I am not harping on social media being destructive to society. I just am adamant that we do recognize what is happening and understand it for ourselves. One of the most powerful things in your life that you can be, I've said this especially for a young woman, is decisive and discerning. So when you do have nostalgia and something in your mind is trying to deceive you into thinking that you were better or you would be better off, or that you should feel regret, instantly when the tone changes in your thought pattern, see it, categorize it, and move on. Oh, nope, that's ego. That's my ego yapping again. My ego alarm is going off. Boom, boom, boom. Move forward. Recognize what is happening to you so that you can become stronger than it. To become better and to evolve, which is what we're on the planet to do, you must be very comfortable with change. You must grow very comfortable with change. You, at this point, have to become very comfortable with mourning your previous self. That means mourning the person that you were in college and mourning the person that you were yesterday. Mourning until you can wake up tomorrow and it's not painful anymore. It's just you and it's just a new day. It's not easy to do, okay? But don't be a person that holds themselves hostage to the past. I see it every single day. People who leave college and literally cannot move on with their lives. I vowed to myself that I would never be that person. I never even let myself stray there in my mind. But every single day, I also meet women who have pain in their eyes even looking at a younger woman. It goes for any older person that, can't even tell you their age. This is a whole nother conversation of the fact that aging is a privilege. But just be smarter and higher to not be that person. One of the most profound things I've ever heard is the fact that gods don't fear time because they have an endless amount of it. Gods don't fear time because they are eternal. Gods don't fear time because they have an unlimited amount of time. So let's just say, to personify this concept, if there was something that's going to take 6 months, but you don't want to start it because it's going to take 6 months, you are both limiting yourself and ignorant to your divinity, your godliness. Because I'm sorry, are you not an eternal being too? If you have a tough time accepting that, or you don't agree with that statement, I want to ask you, are you going to spend your life fighting time against time? You will never win that fight. You are much better putting your energy into the fight against your own ego than the fight against time. I just saw a TikTok about this the other day, and it's something I've experienced so many times. Do you ever look at photos of yourself and end up missing yourself? How could that possibly be? And why is it so particularly weird and unsettling? As I've become more of a critical thinker, if I do say so myself, over the past couple of years, and I've started asking these questions, one question I've not gotten to the bottom to, and I'm kind of scared to answer, is, do people actually change? My answer is unsteady, but my answer would be both. At our core, we do not change. The soul is unchanging. The soul is not touched by life around us. It is not affected by day-to-day happenings. It is not impressed upon by people, good or bad. Your soul is only exacerbated by life happening around you, but it is not harmed or hindered. Much in the same way that God is unchanging, our souls are unchanging. God doesn't have bad days and good days. Contrary to a lot of Christian texts and teachings, God doesn't feel anger towards you. That's my belief. God is unchanging. God is just the perceptual state of love. Our mind does change. The changing variable in our mind is the degree to which we can clearly see and understand our soul as it operates in our human body through the earth, through our experience on earth. To my understanding, our experience on earth is our soul experienced through our mind. How clearly we can see and be connected with our own soul is how we as people can change day to day and throughout a lifetime. Do not be held hostage to the past. Luckily, you take you everywhere that you go. Bye-bye.